evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the Monday, August 22nd, 2022 Gardner, Kansas Planning Commission meeting. Everyone please rise and state the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll now move into roll call, starting on my right.
Commissioner Souza here.
Commissioner Ham here.
Commissioner Mader here.
Commissioner McNair here.
Commissioner Juniman here.
Commissioner Cooper here.
We have quorum with 5 in attendance and 2 absent. Moving on to the consent agenda. All matters listed within the consent agenda have been distributed to each member of the Planning Commission for study. These items are considered to be routine and will be enacted upon by one motion with no separate discussion. If separate discussion is desired on an item from either the Planning Commission or from the floor, that item may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. Is there any item any member of the commission would like to have moved to the regular agenda? Any item any member of the public would like to have moved to the regular agenda? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion to approve the consent agenda made by McNear with a second by Ham. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Consent agenda passes approval 5-0.
Madam Chair, I'm just going to recognize that final plat will go before the City Council on September 6th because it is a final plat and their job is to primarily accept, well actually just to accept easements and right-of-ways. They're not actually approving the plat. We're able to put that on the September 6th agenda for them.
Okay, very good. And also for the notes, I'm bad at math. We just talked about that before. We actually have 6 commissioners present and 1 absent. So if we could make that noted for the minutes. Sorry, I jinxed myself by having a math conversation prior to the meeting. So with that, regular agenda item number 1. The University Park Apartments Final Development Plan FDP-22-05 Preliminary Plat PP-22-04 and Final Plat FP-22-07 at the northwest intersection of 167th Street and White Drive. We have a staff presentation this evening.
Yes, we do, and it's all in one. So we have 3 items: the final development plan, the preliminary plat, and the final plat for University Park. This last came before you in April, where it was the preliminary plan and rezoning, and that was approved at that meeting. A quick recap: this is a 35.5-acre site at 167th and White Drive. The rezoning was approved by the governing body May 16th, and since that time, Flint Trails to the southeast has been rezoned for a duplex development, and it is preliminary planned at this stage. So first, item 1 is the final development plan for University Park.
No. Oh. You'll win all of that work.
No, thanks. Good interruption.
Thank you.
All right, everyone good?
We're good.
All right, so the final development plan is in substantial compliance with the preliminarily approved development plan. A couple things to note: the southern pond on the right side of the screen, it has been removed because of that. There's a streamway there, and they've added several bike racks and benches throughout the development.
It's been removed. Why?
I'm sorry?
I couldn't understand what you said. It's been removed.
I believe it was due to just the stormwater management plan, and if you have further questions on that, I believe the applicant would have more information than what I can give you. Sorry. The apartment elevations, were submitted, and they've had a few tweaks with suggestions we gave. Particularly, the garage doors were changed to give a bit more variety. The entrances have had some enhancements done, and small details like that. The townhomes on the north end have had similar things where the entrances have received a bit more attention, and the garage doors in those middle two units are different. Staff recommends approval of the final development plan based on the findings in the staff report. Item 1B is the preliminary plat for University Park. And this one's pretty simple. It meets all technical review requirements and follows the code as well. Staff recommends approval of the preliminary plat based on the findings in the staff report. And item 1C is the final plat for University Park. It too is in substantial compliance with the, it's in substantial compliance with the preliminary plat, and it too meets the technical review and all the code requirements. Staff recommends approval of the final plat based on the findings in the staff report. And along with the preliminary and then the final development plan, there were 3 deviation requests, and they're the same and identical to the ones you previously saw. So I can quickly go over them. The first 2 had to do with the accessory buildings, the garages, and the maintenance structure. It just allows them to build the way they have proposed, and we support this deviation. Request 2 is for the size of them. This allows them to have a garage structure that is more, it's better for the amount of cars they need to have in them, and so we support this deviation as well. And deviation request 3 was for the bicycle parking. As you know, the requirement is 1 per dwelling unit, so then that would be 606 bike spots. The applicant requested 70, and staff also supports that deviation. So staff recommends approval of the final development plan and associated preliminary plat and final plat with the conditions outlined below. And staff is available for any questions.
Great, thank you. We have the applicant with us. Anything else they'd like to add? Please state your name and address for the public record.
Certainly. Hello, Commissioners. My name is Judd Clausen, Phelps Engineering, 1270 North Winchester, Olathe, Kansas. We're the civil engineers and surveyors for the project. With me tonight is Mr. Greg Prieb, Austin Park LLC, Prieb Homes. He's the developer of the project. Also with me is Clint Evans with NSPJ, our architect. So we get too deep into some architectural things, we're gonna have to call Clint up here to bail me out. So just real briefly, thank you, Jesse, for the presentation. You covered a lot of the things that I was going to say. I think you're all familiar with where things are at here. This was from the original preliminary presentation that we were in front of you back in April. Since then, we went to City Council, were approved. We then went on to the Airport Commission, were approved unanimously there, and then on to Board of County Commissioners, where we were also approved unanimously. We have since received our FAA clearance letter, which was a condition, and so that box is checked for us on this project. This was the preliminary site plan back at the time of preliminary, and Jesse alluded to there were a couple of ponds on the site, and when we got into final grading and stormwater design, we discovered that it was going to need to be too deep for those ponds to work correctly. It would look like a crater, and really not a very sizable pond at all. So we changed our stormwater management plan to do infiltration design instead of having a pond design. Instead, we're landscaping the area. We're still having the walking paths and stuff like that around them, but that design was minor change to it. I threw this slide into the presentation to just give you an idea of that our final plan is so much very similar to our original plan. If you kind of notice, we have a driveway connection off a White Drive there. Actually, two of them. One a double divided drive on the south side, and then up by the clubhouse, which is kind of in your top center, or north is to the left on this, so this would be the eastern point of the site. And then two more drives along University there. You remember there was quite a bit of discussion at the time of preliminary about saving the trees on the north end. That's still the plan. Nothing changed there. We still have the 32 units or 8 buildings of townhomes on that north side, 586 apartments, total of 618 units on the project for density around 17 and a half in that neighborhood. It's all really outlined in your staff report. If I flip to the final site plan, it's not as pretty as the preliminary, but it's the black and white that you just saw from Jesse's, and the road, the parking, the geometry, all still very consistent. What you notice is, we've added more detailing, and especially in the plan packet, more details of sidewalks, landscaping, architectural details. Spent a lot of time working with staff through that. We've gotten some great comments. We had some good discussions on things we can do to the buildings, to the architecture, to the landscape to make the project better, to meet the city's requirements on those items. But what I wanted to do is just share with you that this is very consistent to what you already saw, and we're moving forward with that plan. Going back to the site plan, still have quite a few tuck under garages. You can kind of see that on the parking lot side of each of the buildings. Those all have tuck unders, and you'll see that in the building elevations. We do have quite a few standalone detached parking garages. You can see that towards the bottom of the page here, or on the west end of the site. Those are standalone detached parking garages, which was a reason for the deviation, because we technically aren't allowed that many, but we think this is a good thing for a multifamily development to have. Spent a lot of time detailing out the landscape plan. In your packet was a detail of and what we've provided with staff was detailed blow up areas of each area with detailed landscaping planning requirements. We put a lot more time into the clubhouse area, which is there on the eastern point of the site, and I'll get to that in a minute. We also expanded some of our detailing on our open space and civic space plan. Still have that main spine of sidewalk and trail connection through the middle of the site. It's kind of depicted there in red, so you can walk north to south through the whole site up, and that's part of that whole overall corridor. One thing that didn't show up on this graphic, I wish it did, so I apologize for that, but there is a 8-foot trail. There's 8 or 10-foot trail connection, I believe, to the south. Off that south loop, it comes along White Drive, crosses the culvert, and we are also constructing a 10-foot trail along the north side of 167th Street for our frontage along there. So, pedestrian connection is very important to the city. It's also very important to our client. We want people to be able to bike and walk and enjoy, living in this upscale community. As I mentioned, NSPJ has spent quite a bit of time putting together kind of more details for what's going on in the clubhouse and the landscape plan for that. As you can see, quite a bit of robust landscaping. That's the landscape plan on the left side. Pool, shade structures, 5,200 square foot clubhouse. It's a 2-story indoor space, indoor-outdoor space, kind of opens up to that outdoor pool area. We've got a fitness area with private class opportunities, so someone could come in and teach a yoga class, once a week or whatever in there. Pool, obviously, with those types of amenities like a zero entry deck and splash pad areas. We also thought, since bicycling, we're putting in the bicycle parking areas. We have a little bicycle maintenance area, so you can do, repairs on your bike as part of the Clubhouse package. We have a dog wash and grooming area, dog park and walking trails. And we do have a small kitchen where you can rent that out, and you can host, like a party or community events or private events for that matter, as part of the clubhouse, and also a sport court. So as you can see, it's quite of a rich package of amenities for our residents here. So we think it'll be quite well received. So wanted to go over a few things. I kind of looking at the isometric views like this, the perspective views of the building. A couple of things, kind of starting on the left at the top there. We, upgraded more instances of changes in color and material to further break up horizontal planes, adding trim and upgraded cornices at the top of the buildings. Down towards the entryways there, we accented the building entries with columns, sconce lighting, wider overhangs, and landscaping, which is depicted on a landscape plan. You don't see it in this rendering. Changed up the garage door types, so we'll have a varied amount of garage doors, kind of break that up, and added vertical trim in instances along the upper parts of the building to kind of help, again, break up that horizontal planes. These are some of the details that have come out of great conversations that we've had with staff to develop these architectural renderings. Of course, the front-on elevations, they don't read as well as to me as that last image, but what I'm showing you here is all the different buildings and the consistency of the architectural theme and the massing and how the vocabulary of the buildings all read. And Jesse also showed you the townhome elevations. One thing that's important is we've got and you can see it in the upper left there, that's the side of the townhomes. We've got that canopy that comes across along the side of the townhome and protrudes out to the front with columns, provides a nice walkway there that's covered, and you can read it on the front elevations there in the lower right. It helps pull that architecture of that building out in front of those garage doors to help meet that requirement that is really important in part of your code. Okay. With that, I'm just going to close my presentation. We appreciate staff's review and appreciate your view of this tonight. We agree with the stipulations and happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. All right, we'll have commission discussion. We've got the applicant here with us. Great presentation. We have staff, obviously, here for questions. So, Commissioner Souza, we'll start with you on the right.
I just have a question about the ponds. So what was the main reason? You said because it was gonna, had to dig deeper?
Yeah, so when we got to designing it, we'd end up with the water surface 5 to 6 feet below elevation to get the weir and the storage, right? And so in such a small area like the area on the north end, it just got to be too small a footprint, too deep. It really wasn't aesthetic enough to even consider a pond. So we wanted to change it up with more of a landscape design instead and use infiltration basins or infiltration trenches as part of our BMP package.
So the original project, you guys had planned for those bike racks before, so you're replacing where the pond was supposed to be, I guess, putting the bike racks?
No, the bike racks were always there.
Already there?
This is it just become more green space. You can kind of see it there. I don't have the blow up sheets for it, but where you see L102 on the left, that's where a pond used to be. Instead, we've got a nice lawn area there surrounded by landscaping that people can use as, kind of an open free space to have a picnic or enjoy, just being outside. Towards the south end, we've still got the amoeba shape type walking path around it, and we'll plan to supplement that with plantings and such as part of the project. But we really didn't like the whole design. Once we figured out how the engineering had to work for these ponds, it was just going to be too deep and kind of unsightly, in my opinion.
Commissioner Sosa, I'm going to go ahead and add here something that doesn't show up on the site plans, and Mr. Clausen can address this also, is just to the south of that area where the circular trail is and everything, there is drainage coming through here from the site, actually from the Flint Trails site, and also from the Genesis Farms property. So there is through drainage that passes through this area too. So that's part of the constraint as to why that trail doesn't get as close over to that southern edge of this property. I don't know, Judd, if you want to.
Absolutely, that's another great point too. There, you can see it on this existing aerial of the site. North is up. So 167th is just to the bottom of the page there. And you can kind of see the darker hatching there, or shading. There's a large ditch that runs through there, which was also causing us a problem with that south pond. You can see on this drawing the culvert there towards the right end of the page. That's the box culvert that goes underneath White Drive there, and it drains everything towards the west and down towards the quarry.
That's the only question that I had. I thought you guys were replacing the area pond with more white wrecks.
And if I could jump in, I believe I quickly brushed through that in my presentation. They took out the ponds, and then other changes they were making, they were adding benches and networks in various areas.
I was under the impression when you were explaining that you were just totally
Right. So
Sorry.
just bike rec.
wrecks over the area, which is I was just curious.
Yeah, so that was kind of an ancillary comment that really didn't have anything to do with the ponds, but when we were kind of working through the review of the plan and stuff, we talked about, it'd be really good if we added some seating areas around some of these trails where, you could take a rest or just sit down and enjoy, your surroundings there. So we dropped in, and you'll see those clouded on this drawing. We clouded in adding several seating areas around the site to give that opportunity. It wasn't really because we weren't doing the pond, it kind of was independent of each other, but we added the seating areas in some of those same areas. Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Ham?
No, it looks good. Thank you for explaining what you were doing in lieu of the pond, and that completely makes sense. My big concern with that area to the south was the aesthetics of the houses that back up to that. So thank you for seeing that, what you had planned with the pond would have been unsightly due to the design and the constraints you had in that area. So I'm completely happy with the changes that you made. And I love the overall changes that you've made to breaking that up. I thought it looked great before, but I really like what you're doing now with the changing it up, so it's not just all like one thing. Your eyes kind of like rest, and like I said, the way that it looks from the houses that are over there, I'm really pleased with the changes that you've made. So
Thank you.
Commissioner McNair?
Just first wanted to say thank you for all the hard work to staff and Phelps and Preve organization. This looks very, very good. I particularly like the fact that you were very concerned about the aesthetics, particularly on the south end and the north end, where there had been ponds before, as well as just breaking things up along the apartment buildings themselves. I think this, along with the amenities package in the clubhouse area, I think this is going to be a very good addition to the city of Gardner. Good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Juniman?
Yeah, I just want to echo Steve's comments. Like, this seems very similar to the apartment complex I lived in Lenexa. Very similar amenities and layout, tuck under garages. And, I enjoyed living there when I was there. So I think this will be a good project for the city. I emailed the city just asking for the stormwater management plan because I was, as an engineer, I was like, where are the detention ponds? This thing's a big site. So thank you for explaining that. Can you like kind of, you said you're gonna have infiltration throughout the site. Can you explain maybe a little bit more detail, like what you're planning for that? Like you're just gonna have like some rocky.
Yeah,
areas
so it
along
would be
roads?
more of an underground type system. We use a lot of the ADS StormTech chambers. It's a brand name, but we'll do a lot of those types of systems where it makes sense to just do the infiltration that way. They work really great from a standpoint of one of the biggest things about doing a development like this is just really the litter that you can sometimes have in a parking lot. Just stuff falls out of people's car, whatever, and it makes its way down into the storm sewer system. And with those types of systems, you can get what they call an isolator row, where any trash that's being carried downstream gets trapped in that isolator row. And then the other chambers, water migrates through the other chambers, and that's part of the infiltration into the groundwater. But over time, that isolator row can be cleaned out from time to time. Or we may use like a storm manhole that's specially designed to capture floatables and large solids and things like that. So that we're kind of using a design to address those types of pollutants for the downstream system. And we find that is a lot more maintainable. It's really good for apartments and commercial businesses because you get a lot of that type of pollutant that normally escapes, bioretention basins because stuff floats and then goes on down the overflow spillway, where you don't have that situation in this type of design. So that's kind of where we're headed with the design of this, and we've had a lot of great success with it on past projects.
Well, that's great to hear. Yeah, because we definitely don't want to end up downstream in Gardner Lake or somewhere else. So, only other comment I had was with that large culvert exit on the northwest corner. It looked like it's you're raising the grade about 8 or 9 feet there, so for that culvert exit and grading for the parking and everything. It was right underneath the power line. It looked like, so just making sure that the city electrical division has a chance to look at that and approve that, see if they need to make any modifications to raise that clearance there.
And that's something that we'll still have a lot of utility coordination to do yet with this project as we get into the permitting, but that's something that will be scrutinized with that. So if we have to, we maybe make an adjustment on a low wire or replace some poles, to get those clearances, or maybe we can adjust the grade slightly to fine tune that as we get into permitting. So appreciate that comment.
And that's all the comments I had.
Thank you.
Great. Commissioner Cooper?
I have a couple of questions, and I actually had one about the infiltration system, so thank you, Commissioner Jewell. In the rear elevation picture of the townhomes, there's only one door. Is that a side view? I'm not sure, I don't understand that.
Yeah, they're on the.
Okay, this is where the civil engineer has to call up his friend, the architect, to bail him out. So.
Good evening, Clint Evans and SPJ Architects. The doors are on the returns of that bay, the blue bay that you see. The doors are actually on the sides, so those are covered porches. Yeah, you actually see them in the upper left corner elevation. It's called the right elevation, even though it's in the upper left. You'll see the door right there.
Okay, so what's the door on the back then?
That is for one of the units. We actually don't have the plans here.
We don't have the unit plan.
Yeah, but that is, yeah. Mhm.
What?
Is this fire suppression? Is it fire suppression room? Fire suppression.
It's sprinkler room.
Oh, so,
Okay,
okay,
great.
just to clarify, so that's what I thought I heard. So that middle door, the white middle door, is the fire suppression room there, and all of the doors for the 4 units are on the returns. So where the blue segments are coming out, you basically have doors on each side of those, one for one unit, one for the other unit, so.
That makes sense. I just wondered how people were gonna get out.
That's a great question.
Look at this
I'm glad-
wonderful covered porch.
Absolutely.
We don't want you to use it. So,
Okay, that's all the questions I had, thank you.
thank you.
I don't have any other questions. Thank you for the presentation. Much appreciated. There's no other commission comment discussion. I'll entertain a motion on this item.
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
After review of applications FDP 22-04 Final Development Plan, PP 22-07 Preliminary Plat, and FP 2207 Final Plat for University Park Apartments dated June 30, 2022, and staff reports report dated August 22nd, 2022. The Planning Commission approves the application as proposed and recommends the governing body accept the dedication of right-of-way easement and easements provided the following conditions are met. Number one, approval of all deviations as presented by the staff support or report. Number two, construction of plans for any utilities, infrastructure, or public facilities shall meet technical specifications, and public improvement plans shall be submitted and approved prior to the release of the plat for recording. The applications shall be received and approved by Johnson County Board of Commissioners prior to the results, prior to the release of the plat for recording. Number four, applicant may coordinate with their stormwater and public improvements with Public Works in records to the city's planned 167th Street improvement. Number five, provide a stormwater management note on the plat that reads, all lots shall provide on-site stormwater management facilities in accordance with Title 14 of the City of Gardner Municipal Code, the Gardner technical specifications for improvements, projects, and design criteria for public improvement projects, and the APWA Manual of Best Management Practices for Stormwater Quality. And the attachments: 1, preliminary plat; 2, final plat; and 3, final development plan. And number 6, requirements: approval of the final stormwater management plan by the City of Gardner Public Works Department. Sorry for the
I'll second.
Great. We have a motion made by McNear with a second by Ham. Any questions on the motion? We'll take a vote then. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
That concludes our regular agenda for this evening. Staff, is there anything for discussion tonight?
I got a couple things for you, Madam Chair and members of the commission. One thing that came to mind with this last item that I'll just bring up to you. First of all, I should mention that the plats and stuff will go before the City Council on September 6th, just as the other plats. So we're going to try to put those onto those two, or both of those onto that meeting, that first meeting in September. The second thing that came to mind from here real quickly is just that I'm going to try to forward you all a PDF copy of the APWA Manual on Best Management Practices. Don't feel like you have to memorize it, but in listening to the conversation tonight, there are terms that are getting thrown out that may be a little bit different for you or unusual or new, and it's a way to get an idea of what the best management practices are for stormwater quality management. And I think that's an important part of this. We are now getting beyond just the quantity amount of stormwater, which is really the traditional detention, retention type facilities, and getting into stormwater quality as well. And that's what you were kind of hearing from the last applicant when they were talking about capturing the pollutants before they leave the site, things like that. So Gardner is moving forward in getting to those best management practices now. And so I feel like I should get you that PDF so you can at least see it. And it's technical and it's engineering, so Commissioner Juneman will like it. I don't know about the rest of you. So, but just be aware of that. It'll be important because that's what our city engineers will be looking at as they're reviewing some of these documents and things like that that come before you. So I wanted to make you aware of that. Now that we have our reappointed commissioners all on board, so with the swearing in tonight of 2 of you, all 3 of those that were up for reappointment are back on board or on the commission. We will do our elections next month. Hopefully Commissioner Hanson will be here for that. I don't know how many of you saw he had a health issue for tonight, so he cannot be here. But we can do elections next month as part of the agenda. playing with the new staff report formats a
Yeah, I
little bit.
saw that.
So we're gonna try to do some things with that to shorten the staff reports up, but yet get you the pertinent information. So just be aware of that. Jesse is working on that primarily. Bob and I are reviewing and commenting and trying to tweak it. We're gonna probably be tweaking it some more over the next month or two as we start looking at this. So hopefully you kind of saw that executive summary sheet at the beginning, kind of give you an overview of some of the pertinent stuff. And then we're gonna try to edit some of that verbiage to get it a little more concise, especially in things like plats, which are really just, they're technical reviews. Did they meet the code and the ordinances that are in effect? If they did, we really don't have much wiggle room for not approving them. So just be aware that one's coming up. The last thing that I just wanted to bring your attention, I gave you a handout before the meeting started. I believe last month I mentioned this item was going to be looked at, the food and beverage mobile and mobile grouping uses, if you will, from our code. We're not gonna make a decision tonight, and I'm not expecting you to get familiar with this and go through questions and answers. But what I wanted to do is get you the draft of what I'm working on currently and where we're at. So anything that is black font is existing language. Okay, so that's already in our regulations. The red or the red cross out is where I'm proposing changes potentially. I am still editing this, I'm still working through it. The primary goal here is not to make it difficult for mobile food users, but if you remember from last month, the big issue we're having is some of these are becoming permanent and semi-permanent uses. So one of the primary goals is to try to differentiate between what is truly a mobile food and beverage use versus one that has become semi-permanent or permanent in nature. And again, a lot of that had to do with the tie-ins that we're starting to see to public utilities. They're not just simply running an extension cord to a power source of a building that's on the site. They're now going ahead and setting up meters and tying electrical right to the meters, or in some cases have run conduit on top of the ground into sewer pipes, which is not something we want to have happen. So be aware of some of that that's going on. So that was one key, is that differentiation. The other one is the definition of when we have a grouping. Mobile food and beverage uses were pretty well defined, and the intent of the ordinance was really talking about that individual food truck, if you will, that thing that has its own generator, it has its own water source, it takes its gray water and dumps it in an appropriate facility somewhere else, and it moves off site when it's not operating. We also have what are called now food truck courts, or groupings according to this language, because the term groupings was something that was indicated in the existing language. I'm trying to remain consistent with it, and that's what we're trying to get to, is if we have a proposal for a food truck court or grouping, which is more than one on a property, there's some things that we're looking at, like requiring a conditional use permit, or through the special events side of this, they would have to get individual temporary use permits so that we can see a site plan and understand what's going on there. Again, in Gardner, we want to support the entrepreneurialism of people to start that small business, to have a way to get to hopefully a bricks and mortar restaurant. That's what we would love to see happen. But in a lot of cases, we want to be careful that we don't have trailers just setting up and becoming permanent. And all of a sudden I've got a restaurant that's kind of operating, but there's minimal investment into the site and minimal investment into the actual business. So when you're looking through these changes, understand I'm trying to stay consistent with much of the wording that's in the code already. The sections that are here come from various parts of the code, so if you want to get online, I tried to at each section cite the section of the code so you'll be able to find it in the LDC. And I tried to do this in order of the sections as they appear in the code, so just be aware of that. Again, the red font is where you'll see the changes occurring primarily there. My intent next month is to get to what I would call the final draft, and we will have it as an item on the agenda. We won't set a public hearing at that point. It'll be more for you all to ask questions, to have a conversation. I'll walk through things in a little more detail, with the idea that hopefully we can set a public hearing probably in the October meeting for that period of time. For those of you who have not gone through this process with me before, I just like the idea of introducing this stuff to you initially, let you get your heads around it, have the conversation before we set the public hearing so that there's some guidance as to what staff was thinking, what you may see as other issues. And if I have to make revisions before the public hearing, I can do that based on that conversation. So hopefully it draws the process out a little bit longer, but there's not really pressure here. There's not a public demand. It's just jumping up and down that I get this done in a month. So I prefer we walk through it this way. That way you get oriented to things and you have thoughtful questions. But
Is this the same process we did with the billboard and stuff?
pretty much the same kind of process, yeah. We'll have the conversation, we'll set the public hearing, and then decide how to move forward with that. Because what you'll be doing is making a recommendation to amend the LDC in these sections. And at that point, our legal advisor, Spencer, will look at this too through the process. He has not had a chance to look at this yet, so that's the other part of the review that'll go on behind the scenes. He'll tell me if I'm doing something illegal or not. I don't think I am, but
I'll tell you that.
yeah. So with that, I think that's all I have for you tonight, unless there's other questions.
Great.
No,
Anybody?
thanks for that AWP big. Like I was drawing context clues from the conversation of what was going on with that, so that would be helpful to
Yeah.
be familiar with the
And-
terminology.
And a lot of cities are already implementing that manual and doing the BMP work. Smaller communities were given a lot more leeway to implement this, but we're now getting to that point where we need to implement it to keep some of our permits for wastewater water provision. This requirements of EPA and other stuff that we need to meet those demands. So what's nice here is we've been able to see what's going on in the metro area and what works and what doesn't work. Living in Lenexa and having worked with Lenexa, which was way ahead of the curve, they had what was called the Rain to Recreation program. They developed some regional types of facilities so that you didn't have to do detention and retention on every site. They did things with the BMP implementation that adds to the landscaping. So I think there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve here for us, but I think we're on top of it now, so I think we're in good shape.
This looks like a really good first attempt at trying to improve quality of stormwater runoff and a first stab at what the manual implies. I also think that just being conscious of the quality of the water that runs off and being able to catch or detain the pollutants, as well as not having detention ponds, because they can present safety hazards. They can be unsightly, and when they're dry, they don't look worth a darn at all. So, good work. Thank you.
Like I said, I'll get you that PDF. You can look through it, and then Austin can give me questions. It shows some pictures. It's got some things in there so you get a feel for it, and some of it is just enhanced landscaping areas that they'll have sand filters built into the soil complex that help to get the water to absorb further into the ground or deeper into the ground versus having it run off somewhere. There's a lot of different solutions out there that could be
highly desirable.
Yeah.
Really good.
I would suggest maybe Austin can take a look at this PDF.
I know, I love
And do a
having
presentation for us.
Yeah, there you go. He could do the education on it for you.
It's been a few years. to get
That's what happens when you are an engineer, you know.
Yeah.
That's what happens to you. So anyway, and I hope tonight the other thing I will just briefly mention the University Park apartments. There were several changes that occurred on those elevations and things, and I hope you noted some of those things. We did have a good architect and engineer to work through those items. Some of them were pretty nitpicky little details, but staff felt pretty good about the changes they made, especially if you look at those townhome and duplexes where they bumped out some of the coverage areas for the porches and walkways that helped to get the flatness out of that fourplex building, and that was really nice to see them do those things. So hopefully, as you're looking at more of these kinds of proposals and that, you'll start catching some of those same kind of details at preliminary stage.
The rear elevation of the townhomes was particularly good with the clean look of the
Well, I gotta hand it to Commissioner Cooper for pointing out the one door, because I don't know that any of us had really caught that and sat there and looked at it, so I'm glad that happened. So it shows that you're all looking at those elevations and that's important to do that. You can see certain things sometimes that we can at least have a discussion as to, can we require something, or do we want to look at this a little bit differently, and it can only elevate the quality of what we get in the built environment at the end. So
Good job.
All right, we don't have anything else?
I just want to thank the Jesse that you distributed the package, put a rubber band, so I got myself. It was kind of nice.
Yes, I would say not all of you got that because I couldn't find it.
I forgot to bring your rubber band back, I'm sorry.
It was perfect, it was right there.
we still haven't figured out what happened a month ago.
I mean, I have maps all over my yard.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
The wind, I don't know what happened, it was early. Yeah.
And neighbor kids, they're very interested in this.
All right.
Thank you, Jesse.
Yeah, thanks, guys, appreciate it. Nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion to adjourn made by McNear, with a second by Pam.
Oh, she'd be-